I'm Matt Eastland.
And I'm Lukxmi Balthasan. And welcome to the Food Fight podcast from EIT Food, Europe's leading innovation community working hard to make the food system more sustainable, healthy, and trusted.
At EIT Food, we're incredibly passionate about supporting entrepreneurs from all corners of the agri-food sector, and from talented innovators launching their first ideas to scale-ups attempting big moves in the marketplace. EIT Food has built a number of programs to help ventures of all shapes and sizes. So that journey as an entrepreneur, so launching a product or a service and growing this like a really strong, resilient brand, is something we really want to talk about today. And with us, we've three amazing guests from different EIT Food Business Creation programs. So our first guest is Ying Shao, the co-founder of Plantik Biosciences, a company looking into new advancements in plant breeding. Plantik is part of our seedbed incubator program. Welcome to the show, Ying.
Thanks. Very happy to join you here.
Lovely to have you.
And next up, we have Lorenzo Conti. He's the founder and MD of Crover, a company that has developed a robotic grain monitoring solution that can swim through grain storage units to monitor the condition of what's inside. Really interesting technology. So Crover is an alumni of the Seedbed program last year and is currently a member of the EIT Foods Accelerate Network. So welcome to the podcast, Lorenzo.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you.
And finally, someone we've met on this podcast before. So Solveiga Pakštaitė, founder and director at Mimica. The company's first product, Mimica Touch, is a temperature-sensitive label for food packaging that can tell you exactly when your food has gone off. And Mimica are also part of EIT Food's Rising Food Stars Association. Great to have you with us, Solveiga.
Thanks for having me back. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks all for being here. So we want to hear all about your stories as entrepreneurs today and hopefully share some great advice for our listeners. But one thing that immediately strikes us is that all of your companies start from incredibly disruptive ideas. So you're all challenging the status quo, the traditional methods of doing things. So to kick off, do you think you need to have a particularly good background in business or a huge wealth of experience to launch a company and disrupt the marketplace? Or is this all about the idea? So Ying, what do you think?
I think that's a very interesting point because I myself come from a business background. My co-founder is the scientist. So we really complement each other. I do think that the idea is very, very important, but I also think that the idea alone is not really going to work. You can have a bunch of really brilliant ideas, but whether they will work in the real market, how to really take that step from laboratories to the market, I think there's a really long way to go. So I think it will really help to have the business part of things as well, so that you know how to test your ideas, whether it will work, which customers to speak to. So yeah, I would say it would be very good to also have the business part of things.
And Lorenzo, I think for you it's a different perspective, right? You're the scientist. So what do you think?
Indeed, I come from a scientific background, so it's been a learning curve. As I started off, the only business knowledge that I had was the equivalent of A-levels economics, so it wasn't very much. But thanks to programs like the EIT Seedbed and the EIT Food Accelerator networks, I've been through several what I consider mini MBAs that put me at the level of being able to run a startup. So even though I didn't have it to begin with, I think it is required, and it took me a little bit of time to learn how to do the business side of things.
And Solveiga, so you also have a really interesting background, again, technical, but tell us about that because I find that story really interesting.
Yeah, so I'm actually quite jealous of Lorenzo for even having an A-level in this. So literally zero business economic background from my side. I went to university to study industrial design and technology, and never really had an idea to become an entrepreneur until it was actually a university project that got a lot of attention. So I always say that the business happened to me. So I think, no, you don't need experience, because I definitely had absolutely less than zero business experience when I started. But what you do really need is the mindset to learn and accept help and be willing to say, enter pretty big rooms sometimes and say hey guys, I'm completely new to this. I'm here to learn. Like, so be really open to accepting mentors, listening really carefully to what your customers are telling you. Like, even though you want to hear them say, oh, everything is wonderful and we love your product, you really need to listen to what they're telling you. And I really agree with Lorenzo about accelerator programs being like mini MBAs, and that's certainly the position that I now feel in as well. And I think overall, the thing that's going to pull you through is a bit of a naive enthusiasm, that you need to put the energy into it and to be willing to learn things along the way.
Solveiga, so you mentioned something earlier which is really interesting. You said that your business happened to you. So what was the moment when you realized that you said to yourself, I've got a business here? You know, what actually happened?
So as I mentioned, you know, the idea behind Mimica was my final major project at design school. You know, while it was very interesting what I was doing, I didn't really see it going further, and I was encouraged by the university to enter it into something called the James Dyson Award, which is kind of a pretty prestigious design competition that is looking for the kind of best problem being solved by the design students that year. It's an international competition. Entered it, forgot about it, started an internship, and then within the second week of my internship, I got a very interesting phone call telling me that I'd won the UK competition. And it's a pretty big deal here in the UK. So very quickly, it was all over the press. So front page of Wired website, and in the Guardian, in the Time. My surname was the answer for the Times crossword that weekend, which is pretty mad.
No way! That is amazing.
Life goals.
I was going to say, surely you've peaked then. That's
it.
There's nowhere
what
else to go.
Is there? And then I remember particularly that the Evening Standard ran double-page spread about the story with a huge full picture of me like holding the product, or an early version of the product. And, you know, on the tube home, everyone reads the Evening Standard. So it was just this bizarre moment of like me also riding the tube, and people looking down at the newspapers and then looking up at me suspiciously and then down again. No one said anything, silent carriage because it's London. But that was a pretty surreal experience. So all of that was happening, and basically because it was all over the press, food companies started hearing about it and retailers, so they were getting in touch. And I didn't quit my internship. I ended up kind of sneaking out at, you know, lunchtimes to hold meetings at, you know, Coca-Cola's head office at Stanstas. It was kind of mad. And probably within 6 months after that, it only hit me that what I was doing was starting a company, rather than, I was just seeing it as going to fun meetings where people just said nice things about what I'd created. But then I was like, no, this is actually like something that I should be doing. And I joined my first accelerator program.
Amazing. That sounds like every entrepreneur's dream start. So congrats on that. And just on that then, so Lorenzo, I mean, I imagine it's maybe a different story for you, but why did you start Crover?
This is actually very interesting for me to hear Solveiga's story, because it's probably the first time that I go to a meeting and not everyone is saying, oh, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, which is what usually happens. And then I go, I never even thought of putting together a startup, and people look at me strangely, because apparently most people think that you need to fail several times before you can put together a successful startup. In my case, I mean, the story is quite different, but also it kind of happened to me. It wasn't really something planned. I was just doing my PhD at the University of Edinburgh in the broad field of granular rheology, which is a bit like saying fluid dynamics, but for systems made of solid discrete particles. Things like sand in the ground, grains, which is what we're focusing on right now, powders, and so on. And I just happened to observe a novel physical phenomenon that wasn't really known at the time, what we call now the Crover effect.
Wow.
And I still didn't really know what to do with it at the time. Putting together a startup was still not the plan. I just started talking to people without really revealing what the technology was, but kind of describing very generally what it could do. And eventually I just happened to meet one of the advisors from the university under suggestion from a friend, who started giving me reading materials and things. I didn't really understand at the time that he was a startup advisor. I was just like, oh, it's just a guy, giving me advice and giving me useful reading material. So I really kind of sympathize with Solveiga's story, because also I didn't realize until a few months into it that what I was actually doing was putting together a startup. And so I was like, okay, this is happening. This is the way we're going, and is the best way forward rather than an academic route to deliver the benefits that the technology could to society and to the world.
Incredible.
I don't know about you, if you don't mind me asking. I really kind of did not identify with the word entrepreneur for a really long time, because I'm just a designer with this thing, and I go to these meetings, and I was kind of in denial that I was even running a startup and that I was becoming an entrepreneur. So I'm really pleased that at least someone else here had that similar experience.
We have some accidental entrepreneurs here today. And what about you, Ying? So to explain a little bit about Plantik Biosciences, so what exactly do you do, and what's your story, your entrepreneurship story?
Yeah, so Lorenzo, I think I'm one of those people that you will meet that will say that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Well, I guess it's just more like a aspirational, I think, outcome for somebody coming from business. I remember that when I graduated from business school, most people were going to finance or strategy. And I just was naturally attracted to startups, which was not yet a hot topic back then, I would say, because I think just at the back of my head, I always knew that I wanted to do something more or less myself one day. So I went to work in 2 startups just to see how things work. They were at different stages. And from there, last year, I heard about Entrepreneur First, which is a talent investor. They help you to find a co-founder. So I thought that that's great because I didn't want to do this myself. And I wanted to have a tech co-founder so that we can build something that is kind of high barrier. So I went there and I met my co-founder, who is a plant scientist, and he has just done his PhD. So Aditya is his name, and Aditya has had a patent on a gene editing technique on plants. So he created a plant that stops sensing temperature change. We thought that that was really interesting, so we started looking into plant breeding because we realized that it is really something important. We have to do something about it because let's look at the food production, for example. It's growing at half the speed that's needed, and which means in 30 years' time, theoretically, we will have more people starving than today. And for me, it's just a shocking scenario to enter. And you have 2 options. Either you increase the surface on which you grow crops, or you have to increase the yield by hectare of the crops. There's another thing is that, people start to look at alternative protein source as well, more and more. So generally we wanted to start a company in plant breeding to bring the new technologies to plant breeding, which is essentially a quite old practice in agriculture. It takes years and hundreds of crossing to create a stable new plant. And we thought that, we could bring up a technology to make everything much faster because you bring the precision, the efficiency to that process. So what we are doing is that we want to be able to create technologies and a system where we can just accelerate the process of plant breeding. And then we decided to start with hemp, aka cannabis. It's from the same family, because we were just amazed by how many applications this plant has. It's a really multi-purpose, very versatile plant, from treating patients to provide protein source. It's one of the richest seeds in nature, and to sustainability. It's a very good material people are researching on for bioplastic, absorbing CO2, creating carbon neutral farming, etc., etc. So we were amazed by it. And then we saw that because of the historic prohibition on the plant, the research and knowledge around it really stopped for almost a century, which means there's a lot to do with this plant. So we saw the opportunity there, and we think that the newer technology has a higher chance of being applied to this plant compared to, other bigger crops. So that's why we started the company focused on the hemp plants today.
Amazing. What an incredible set of varied stories there. So you've got dedicated entrepreneur, committed to that course. You've got that kind of eureka moment for Lorenzo that sparked that, and Solveiga rolling out of her studies and into this sort of accelerator program, which has obviously just exploded. It's amazing. Just then talking a little bit about where you're all at then. So you're all in the first 5 years of running your companies. So in terms of the learning curves, What have been some of the biggest challenges that have affected you as a company, and maybe also personally, if you're happy to share that? So, Lorenzo, what about you?
I think the biggest challenge that we're still facing today, when we were talking about the fact that we started with the technology rather than the market, is the fact that there is a lot of noise around different startups doing multiple things and a lot of kind of buzzwords like robotics and so on that we sort of somehow fit in, but it's hard always to deliver how innovative what we're doing is. So when we say that we built the first robotic device that can swim through bulk solids, so effectively the first granular drone, if you want to call it like that, we call it a Crover because there's no dictionary word for that. People don't tend to realize that there isn't anything else that can do that,
right?
Unless they do the research. So, often I get people that then they do the research and they're like, oh, I didn't realize that this actually didn't exist. So that's a little bit the challenge that we have, that just the first impression from people is usually, yet another robotic solution that maybe is tackling a specific problem, but they don't realize kind of the wider impact. So I would say that's the main challenge that we have is more of a kind of PR and marketing challenge, but with the limited resources that we have, it takes a little bit of time to get through it.
That's interesting. And Solveiga, did you go through this similar kind of thing for your product? And maybe is there any kind of tips that you can give Lorenzo in terms of getting that marketing out there?
I think it's important to keep focused on developing your technology, like while kind of thinking about, at least every couple of weeks or maybe every couple of months at the minimum, there should be something that the general world should be hearing about what you're doing. We're in a lucky position where we've never really done any press releases or anything like that. We just kind of make use of the inbound journalist inquiries that we get. And certainly I'm saying no to most of them that come in, because I think at the start I made the mistake of just saying yes to all of them because I thought every single one was going to be the last one. So I think when you start making traction, you don't need to talk to every single publication, because you need to think about who you're trying to reach. And I think I wasn't doing that so much at the start. But I think I also would kind of say on social media, don't do it unless you're willing to do it like often. There's no point kind of doing it actively for a couple of weeks and then nothing. So I'd rather actually just be in stealth mode, to be honest, until you're willing to put the time and potentially resources into it. So, but in terms of my challenge, and for Mimica, I started as a sole founder with no business background, which, I was doing my best to learn, but you can't replace experience for that. So my largest challenge was kind of not being sure of myself whether I was making the right strategy decisions and that sort of thing. And every single decision just would take me 3 times longer than it might have taken someone else, because I was having to talk to people or kind of really think it through myself. And just that, even when I've made that decision, the anxiety of, is this the right thing? I have literally no idea what I'm doing. Things to me seem to be, I'm kind of painting myself down, but I was doing an okay job, but I was putting so much brain space into just making it okay. And I think that's when I realized I needed more experienced people to come on board and really help me with that, so I can really focus on what I'm better at, which is maybe not being a CEO. So I actually made the decision a couple of years ago to step aside from the CEO role, and I brought in 2 very experienced guys from the smart packaging field in the smart food industry around reducing food waste. Initially as consultants, because you want to date around for a while before you marry, but I invited Lawrence Kaysen and Laurie Matthews into the company as CEO and CTO, and that's been the best decision for me. And it opened up my headspace to kind of just think about other things, because I hadn't realized until I made the change just how much of my headspace was full of just making 100 decisions a day that I didn't feel very qualified to do. So the whole company has been running so much better. The team is happier ever since I made that change. So don't feel like you are bound to being the CEO just because you founded the company, is my advice.
That's a really interesting point. Yeah. And it kind of brings me back to what I was thinking about what Ying was saying. Most people think being an entrepreneur or founder is a solo, lonely job. And at like what point is the right point to bring on a co-founder? Would you, from your experiences, like Ying sounds like you did this with your co-founder from the beginning, whereas Lorenzo and Solveiga, you were technically strong and the business happened to you. So what advice would both of you, provide to our audience who are technical founders thinking that they need to do this alone?
I didn't want to do it alone. I actually was kind of looking for a co-founder, but I couldn't find the right person. And hearing some nightmare stories about some proper fallouts between co-founders, I decided that while I would like to do this with a co-founder, I think the wrong co-founder is much more harmful than being a sole founder. So that's what I was doing for a little while. But then when I got to meet both Lawrence and Laurie, it was actually an introduction from the head of packaging at Marks and Spencer that made that introduction, because they were already working with them. And they kind of, Laurie in particular, mentored me for a while. And then, when they sold up the business and did really well with their previous business, they got in touch with me saying, like, we like what you're doing at Mimica, can we help? The opportunity presented itself. And at the time when I kind of stepped aside as CEO, a lot of people kind of got in touch with me asking me if I'm okay. Has something huge in my life happened? Like, have I burnt out? Like, and I'm like, no, but like, are you seeing who is willing to take the helm of this huge mission-led company that, I'm still learning, but, I can't do the job that they can do in terms of delivering Mimica at the scale it needs to have the impact it needs to have. So I'm like, are you seeing who's taking over? Like, why wouldn't I do this? I'm still involved in the company, like, full time. We changed my role to founder and director. And what that basically means is that I get to work on whatever I want to and still represent the company, at events. I think choosing that title is important. I was exploring some other titles, but this one really kind of allows me to speak at conferences and go to all the right rooms, because I guess honestly people mix it up for the CEO title, and that's okay. But I know that day to day that's not my role anymore.
Amazing. And I can see Ying on our call here nodding away. It sounds like you're kind of agreeing with what Solveiga's saying. Given the early stage that you're at, are you seeing a lot of what you're going through in what Solveiga's explaining to us?
I just really resonate with what Solveiga said on finding your spots in the mission. I mean, we're super early stage compared to you guys. We founded the company last year. But I also really think that, with time going, I really see the spots that I'm occupying in the company could change. And that wouldn't be something really painful for me. I think what is really important is the mission. It is what we are trying to build. And as long as that's there, I think personally where I sit is not that important as long as I'm contributing to it. So even though I'm not there yet, but I think in terms of value, I really agree with that. And I really appreciate, I think you sharing that. Back on challenges, I mean, as a company, we faced a lot of challenges, but today I think the main thing is that our industry is a really young one. It's really growing. And the plant, as I said before, it has so many applications. So seemingly you have an abundance of choices to start somewhere, but it is also then a curse of choice because you really don't know where to start. You can change this plant or optimize this plant for so many things. And where do you start? And I used to kind of worry about this, but then the more I speak to other entrepreneurs who have been in their journey for many, many years, I realized that it's a constant thing that you have to live with this fact that the market is changing, your customers are also evolving. And this is a question you have to probably ask yourself all the time and reevaluate and adapt to what is happening. So right now, our strategy is to, develop things in parallel with the resource that we have and try to smartly, choose maybe one or two specific targets to start with. But what's really important in our mission is to build up this kind of system where you can just work on the target much faster compared to the traditional techniques. On the personal aspect, I've had so many challenges in this journey, but I think one of the most revealing thing to me is that I had to accept the fact that I would just have lows, like highs and lows, in how I'm working. Maybe before, when I was working in a setup where I had a team, I had a boss and all that, it was less evident. But as an entrepreneur, even if I had a co-founder from the beginning, it's still a quite lonely journey sometimes, especially during COVID times. You are in remote and you are really by yourself a lot of times. But I really learned to live with that and accept that as a journey of entrepreneur. And you just have to deal with things happening so fast and deal with all sorts of information and news happening in your day, and try to be zen about it.
Yeah, zen about it. I like that. And I just put on that point about zen. I mean, Lorenzo, you're obviously a little bit further along. Does this get easier?
Well, I mean, we're not that much farther ahead. We incorporated 2 years ago, but we didn't really have a team until last year.
Right.
So we were just probably a few months ahead of Ying. So yeah, it's still a lot of the problems that she was talking about, I totally sympathize with, because we were still facing them now. But the main thing that has changed is that we've been able to put together a team, whilst initially it was just me having to handle everything. We've brought some amazing people into the team that can handle a lot of things much better than I do. And that's why we're able to be much more zen, like she said, about it, because I know that I can trust other people to handle certain things that I'm not experienced with myself, which kind of links with what Solveiga was saying as well, bringing in more experienced people to take care of things so that you can focus on what you're good at.
And Lorenzo, as an academic, I guess your network and your circles, I'm going to assume, is predominantly other academics. So going from an academic to entrepreneur, what advice would you give to someone in a similar situation for going for help, taking a lab idea and making it into a commercial proposition?
Well, I kind of already had decided before all of Crover happened that I was done with academia. It was not the environment for me, I would say. I mean, I very much enjoy doing scientific work, but just the environment itself, I didn't enjoy very much. And it is a very radical change. It's an entirely different world. People are nicer, but at the same time, you know that they are more fake. So it's a bit of a balance in terms of interpreting what people actually mean. So I'm still learning how to handle the different environment, but I find it one that personally feels much more rewarding and I'm better suited for.
And where do you go for help? Like in terms of, any advice for our listener in terms of finding mentors or advisors?
Well, we got some amazing mentors from EIT Food, so that definitely helps. Especially since, we've had a couple of other mentors that were really experienced and super helpful. But when you go through most of the standard routes, especially here in Scotland, the ecosystem is historically focused on digital tech and biotech, primarily biotech. So it's really hard to find people that have had experience in the kind of things that we do. Whilst through the EIT Food Network, we've been able to find people that had more grain storage specific experience, and that has been very helpful. Because also has helped us and is still helping us right now to realize some things that we weren't able to see ourselves.
Really great to hear that we are doing our job correctly. And Solveiga, what about you? You're a little bit, further along, and what advice would you give to entrepreneurs starting up in terms of asking for help and getting the help?
I've personally actually found that I have gotten a bit more value out of mentors that haven't been assigned to me through programs. I mean, obviously you get some help because they're well qualified and that kind of thing, but I feel like you really get to the next level of getting valuable information from someone if you just genuinely have a spark with someone, and they can really kind of, they don't have to see themselves in you, but they need to definitely like you and then kind of want to go above and beyond the kind of outside of a program, when you've just got set hours to work with your mentor. And I found the most valuable mentors to be ones that, I know we can't do that anymore, but that I've met at networking events after the talks and stuff. You've got a glass of wine and someone's listening to your story and they're like, wow, how can I help? And then they talk about their background and it's like they've got some really useful experience to share with you, and you just kind of end up naturally following up and forming real friendships out of it. So I think you don't need to like invite them to be your mentor. Like, you don't need to put a title on it, which is why I think people kind of get confused about. It could just be someone that you bounce emails with, or meet for coffee with, or take a call for. It's not just one person either. I'm a very promiscuous mentee, and I also kind of see your peers as mentors as well.
Yeah.
And Ying, do you have one mentor, multiple mentors? Have you found that useful?
Yeah, we've had multiple mentors as well. We've had great mentors through the EIT Food program. Now we are also accelerated by Start Life, a agtech specialized accelerator in the Netherlands. So in my experience, sometimes we would naturally go for mentors that seems to have the perfect fit on paper, whether it's on technology or on like the sectors. But it's not naturally like all the time the best person to be on your project, because just as what Solveiga was saying, I actually feel like people who are just genuinely excited about your project and they start to, give you 1,000 ideas all of a sudden, just like that. Those are the people that are really like excited about what you're doing, and they probably are going to be the most committed to help you. So yeah, we started to shift from that kind of, the perfect person on paper kind of thing to, who is really genuine, passionate, and excited about what we're doing. It's almost also like a dating process, like Solveiga was saying. Like, it takes long, and obviously we have the objective to, onboard them more for a longer term as advisors. But you have to kind of spend the time and see how you work together before you can decide on that.
Yeah, I love that. So finding passionate mentors is a key thing, it seems, as well.
Yeah.
Picking up from what you said, Ying, you started off an entrepreneur first, and now you're on the EIT Food Seedbed program. And just to give a little bit of background to listeners, so EIT Food, we offer various different startup support programs that really complement the different journeys of the entrepreneurs go through, from really early stage ones who are trying to validate their ideas. And then we have our Food Accelerator Network, which really focus on companies to establish relationships with partners and really build the company. And then Solveiga, as part of our Rising Food Stars, is an association that helps establish companies to really scale, to think about growing internationally. So these are the three different programs. So coming back to Ying, like, how important is it to have support from accelerator support services, and how do you go about picking the right one?
I'm really thankful to EIT Food Seedbed program, because it came really in the middle of lockdown during COVID-19. So it was in April, and we started to feel, naturally worried about what's happening, and our like lab operations had to halt all of a sudden. And I think it really came at a great time for us, for this cohort. And we are always asking ourselves like which sectors to enter, as I mentioned before. And through the Seedbed program, we had a chance to explore more sectors that we didn't necessarily have connections in. So we learned about, plastics, how the bioplastics is they're developing in terms of technology and market. We could also learn on the construction side of things, because hempcrete is also a great material for building. But we didn't necessarily had connections in those sectors to speak to learn more about what they need. So I think the Seedbed program has been really helpful in that regard for us to understand better what potential partners and customers would want.
Thanks, Ying. And Lorenzo, is that connection piece obviously critical to what you've been going through with the FAN program?
As you mentioned earlier, we're also we've been in the Seedbed program before, and the best thing about all the EIT food programs that we've experienced is that network of some of the top food companies across Europe that you can connect to, that will also reach out to you once they hear through the network about your technology and the possibility of establishing partnerships with them. So I would say that's the top benefit. That is something that takes a lot of time and is really hard to do without the EIT food support.
Thank you. That's kind of you to say. And Solveiga, I guess back to you then. I mean, is the Rising Food Stars program, is that changing your focus or have your needs changed with the program?
I think since joining the program, we actually kind of developed our product to the point where we're ready to scale it. And so that's been an interesting change. So now our focus has shifted to, okay, who in the network can we do projects with? And, you know, some of these companies are within EIT Food, the corporates, we've been chatting to kind of on a casual basis, like we'd kind of catch up every few months. So now, you know, we're like, hey, we're in this club together, like we can maybe access some funding and like do something really exciting together. So it really kind of provides that nudge and reason to do something together. And within the kind of framework of EIT Food, that's really helpful. And I'm really excited to say that we're going to be doing a innovation project funded by EIT Food next year with some really exciting partners. And we also are doing what's called a traction project with one partner as well. I'm not going to say any names yet because I can't at this stage, but it's all because of EIT Food. So thank you very much.
Oh, that's amazing! Look at that. I mean, and for our listeners, apologies. This is a shameless plug for I think EIT Food, but it's really great actually to see that, you know, we can help startups at pretty much any stage of their journey, all the way through from kind of first idea all the way through to scaling up. So that's great to know and great to have you guys to explain that to everybody. Just talking about the growth piece then as we move on, you know, so you've got all those big plans to grow, but I think Ying, you mentioned COVID. I'm surprised it hasn't come up already. You know, resilience is a huge part of, you know, building and growing your business. So just looking back over the past year, maybe, particularly as we've gone through the COVID pandemic, you know, what have been your experiences? Have things changed for you? Maybe you've sort of pivoted, or, you know, maybe you found opportunities actually through COVID. Maybe Solveiga, we can start with you. And the reason I'd like to start with you, because I remember on the last podcast which you were on, you were talking about values and being a purpose-driven business. And I was just wondering, has being a purpose-driven business helped you stay the course through the last year?
That's a really interesting question. So firstly, I think I'll start by saying that establishing we always had our mission, which is the reason we started, which is to radically reduce unnecessary food waste. But I realized it was pretty late in the project, I think. We only set up our values, established our values about 1.5 years ago. And that was a really useful exercise because it really helped the team pull together and say like what makes us different and like, you know, the things that we stand for, and just having them written down and agreed by the team. And I think that also kind of helped me feel, I had a tendency early on to kind of maybe micromanage a bit. And I think, you know, just coming from not a business background, I thought that that's what I needed to do. But I think actually establishing the values in place and writing them in a way that they should really kind of be your guiding principles for making decisions, even if, like, you know, someone from the management team hasn't told you to do that. Like, what would I do if I was living the Mimica values? So whether that's making the impossible possible, so kind of thinking long term, thinking big, like not just thinking short term. So how would I make that decision based on that principle? And being creatively efficient and efficiently creative, so like kind of hustling to kind of get a prototype done and like for the least cost possible in the quickest time. So they don't need me to tell the team those things. So that I think generally in the business, like, other than being able to talk about being a values-led company, which that's not the reason why we set them up, but they should really be helping you out in terms of helping your team become more autonomous in everything that they do. So during coronavirus times, we've really lent into our kind of people-focused values. So we've always had health and family first. So kind of making it really clear that, you know, it's going to be a really challenging time, and some of us have family members to look after or you know, have some special care to, and we don't hide the fact that, for example, Lawrence, our CEO, every Monday afternoon he hasn't been doing Mimica stuff because he has to go make sure that his mum has her shopping done, and that's something that we've been really clear that, you know, you need to do what you need to do. This is just your job, you're obviously using your job for good, but right now we really need to be focusing on the things that really matter, and kind of being a bit more patient with people, understanding that this might be a difficult time mental health wise for some of our team members, but also in our partners. So I think, especially as you're not getting that FaceTime, it could be easier to get frustrated when you're not getting the response you need from a particular partner, but also recognizing that they're a human too. Kindness and respect is another one of our values, and just assuming good intentions is something we keep repeating at Mimica. Like, no one really is out there to kind of get you. I mean, obviously, sometimes they are, but like on the most part, they're not. And just kind of treating people just kind of giving people the benefit of the doubt is something that we've been really leaning into over the last 6 months.
I love that. I really respect that. Being solid on your values, which helps you sort of stay the course, and the autonomy piece, as you say, is also super important as an entrepreneur to help you grow as well. So thank you for sort of explaining that to everyone. Ying, what about you? How has I know you said that you kind of started through this process. So how has that affected you?
I really resonate again with Solveiga, as she was saying that, this crisis for us, I think it taught us to live with imperfection, which is very important, I think, for a startup. So at the beginning of the lockdown, we were in the course of sending the first plant DNA samples to a lab for getting data back. And all of a sudden, that was not possible anymore. We had to wait a month or a little bit more than that. And when we could do that again, we realized that the samples, they were not perfect anymore because they stayed in the fridge for too long. And then we had to make a choice between, going through with it or not. And then we really made a call to say that having imperfect data is better than having no data. So let's just have something and work with that and see what that is. And so I'm really happy that we made that call, because today we are using that to build up the groundwork of the data pipelines. But it was not an easy call to make, because, it was the first time you do that. You really want it to be perfect, and you're spending money on that as well. So I think it's a hard call, but we really learned that you have to just, do something. Sometimes it doesn't need to be perfect, and it just helps you to reach the learning that you need at this stage. And that, I think, is what COVID taught us. Apart from that, we stayed really close with our partners that are specialized in other parts of the supply chain, the value chain, to learn what they're going through. And we realized that COVID also brought new opportunities to the industry. More people are thinking about changing their career or, the course of life and looking to new opportunities. They actually had more like potential clients inquiring on, hemp-based products. We had a partner that try to, respond to COVID with chemical compounds off the plants that could contribute to some meaningful products people could use during COVID. So I think that's all great for us to know. And we could only know that because we stayed close to people and, just keep updating each other and how we are going through this crisis together. So it has been difficult, but some good learnings from it as well.
Thanks, Ying. Living with imperfection and being people-centered. I love it.
Yeah, that's very entrepreneurial. And Lorenzo, what about you? So what has been your experiences so far navigating through COVID?
Yeah, it's tough coming after, because I think Ying and Solveiga put it very nicely. But and I resonate with a lot of the issues. I think from one side you have the economic opportunity and the market need, which, if anything, with the two crises that we have at the moment, the short-term one, which is the COVID pandemic, and the long-term ones, which is climate change and food security, demand for what we're building has increased. Even before the pandemic, we were hearing from the market that they don't have the workforce to verify the condition of the grains as often and as well as they need to, on top of not having the tools to do it. And also the fact that, the food demand has increased and people are trying to increase production whilst you have significant losses down the supply chain that you can actually reduce with a system like ours. So demand has increased, but obviously our part has been, like Ying and Solveiga have said, the internal operations, making sure that we can work as well as possible. Obviously, it's not as easy as before, but we find ways internally. The hardest thing is really dealing with other suppliers. If you need a certain piece of kit or a certain analysis, you got to wait much longer right now. So planning has become much more important because you got to plan much farther ahead, and it's no longer possible to get things done in a few days. So you got to have very good structures in place. And I think, if anything, that has made us potentially more resilient for a normal situation, because we are able to deal with problems that before they would have been catastrophic. And right now, because we are dealing with any sort of potential issues, we are ready for anything to happen.
Firefighting mode.
Yeah, that's right. It sounds like it's really helped you kind of strengthen yourselves, which is, given all of the chaos that's been happening over the last sort of six-ish months, that's really positive to hear. So thanks, Lorenzo.
So guys, I think we've had a really good chat today, but I think we're nearly running out of time. So really quickly, roundtable, what's next for each of you? So Solveiga?
So we're really fortunate that our very intense grant writing efforts during the midst of lockdown have started to pay off. So we're delighted to have support from EIT for the big project next year. The really exciting thing is that we wrote in some of our prospective customers in. So this will be the first step that we're going to be taking with some of our potential customers formally in doing some of these grant projects. So I'm really excited to see what that will turn into.
Oh, well done. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Ying, what about you? What's next for you in Plantik?
Yeah, so we will also have our first research collaboration project quite soon. So yeah, we are really excited about that with the university. And we are going to look into fundraising next year. It's going to be a big challenge as well. So yeah, we are preparing really writing down our targets to see what we want to achieve before that and get some learning from there as well.
Brilliant. Good luck. And Lorenzo?
Yeah, it's a really exciting time for us as well. After being in stealth mode for about 2 years and having to hide our robo from people, we have finally been able to reveal it to the world at the TechCrunch's Wrap Battlefield stage 2 weeks ago. So finally we can show it to people. People are getting much more excited because they can actually see what we're working on. And we've also started our Innovate UK project in partnership with the Agri Epicenter and a cooperative here in Scotland to work on grain sampling as well. That has started this month. And we are starting the first large-scale trials in a few weeks.
Brilliant.
Huge congratulations.
Yeah,
Amazing.
well done.
I have to admit, I really want to see this robot, Lorenzo. I want to see a robot swim. Swimming through grain as well. I mean, come on. Amazing.
I'll send you the link.
We'll have to make a video to go along with the podcast. Yeah. And again, really quickly, so where can people find out more about you and your company? So Solveiga.
The best place is to go to our website, mimicalab.com, but we're also pretty active across the main social media platforms. So particularly LinkedIn is a great place to connect with us and follow our updates.
Brilliant. And Ying?
We are revamping our website. So I think very soon it will be a good place to find more information on us. And also LinkedIn. Yeah, we are active on LinkedIn to share more news.
And Lorenzo?
Yeah, you can learn more about us on our website at www.crover.tech, and you're free to reach me at lorenzo.conti@crover.tech.
Brilliant. Thank you all.
Amazing. Thank you very much. So yeah, just to finish this off, Ying, Lorenzo and Solveiga, thank you so very much for your time today. Another fascinating episode. Great to hear about all of your journeys. So I hope that's been super useful for our listeners. This has been the Food Fight podcast from EIT Food. If you'd like to check us out, please go to eitfood.eu/podcast or hit us up on Twitter at EIT Food. And given the episode that we've just had, please do make sure you also check out our entrepreneurship section of our website to find out more about applying to our startup programs in 2021. So please keep fighting for a better food future.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.